You're listening to Subsound Radio. We bring you streaming and live broadcasting from the capital. This is the Alarpa Podcast. It's 2017, we're back, full of pep, full of energy, full of resolutions. I just can't wait to get started. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you.
Did you have a nice Christmas?
Very nice.
This is the Alarpa Podcast, by the way, if you've just tuned in on your old radio dial there. We're back in Madrid, both Maria and I. Did you travel anywhere nice?
Well, I went back to hometown, Leon.
Okay, well, that would be cool, but I went to Amsterdam
Yeah, of course, that's much cooler.
With my sister, so no marijuana or anything else of that description, but lots of museums and culture. So we're back speaking about culture as we usually do on today's episode of the podcast. We're just checking in, saying hello. Welcome back to 2017, the Chinese Year of the Rooster. So we're not going to be wasting too much of your time today. So without further ado, musical interlude, part 2 of the show. Let's wrap this up. So, are you ready to munch into your bite-sized podcast today?
I am. What about you?
I certainly am. So we went on a little trip today to the Anthropological Museum.
That's right.
Near Atocha train station. You give tours there, don't you?
Well,
You moonlight as a tour guide when you're not in an app or podcasting.
not quite.
So you have an independent source of income, which I was not aware of.
Yeah.
Until today.
It wasn't approved.
Okay, so we went there. There's a special photo exhibition, surprise, that we went to.
Yeah.
But this time it was a Spanish photographer, which we don't normally see, do we?
No, not really. No, and well, it was a small exhibition, but definitely worth seeing. Yeah, about well, it was called like childhood, but in reality it was a bit of everything. There was only a section.
And there's 3 sections. One section on childhood, but the other 2 on general things.
Yeah.
What's the name of this gentleman photographer?
It is Valentin Vega.
So near Atocha and a Museum of Anthropology, and you've just
National Museum.
and we've just heard the photographer's name. So he was active during the 40s, a little bit of 50s as well.
Yeah,
bit of a wandering photographer. He couldn't get a job after the Civil War period and after the end of the Second War in Europe, and he was in prison as well. So he went into the family trade of going around taking photographs. Now we see the word humanist described for every photographer that we've seen so far, like in the last decade. So is this just the word that's in vogue, or could you justify giving this label to this gentleman?
I think it's kind of like the type of exhibitions that we feel like going to visit to start with. That probably has an influence.
Well,
but,
to be fair, any photograph of a human could technically be called humanist. So
well, I think we've seen some things that we didn't quite think qualify for that, even if they wanted to. Well, I mean, this exhibition was like quite close to home for me. So a lot of the photos, I could relate them to photos of my parents or grandparents.
Do you live near Atocha or something?
No, but I live in the station, and near a bridge. No, but well, a lot of the photos like had similarities with photos that I've seen at home from parents and grandparents and so on. So it was quite easy for me to establish a link with what I was seeing.
You do see Spanish life over 2 decades every strata. Well, not every strata, I would say, but the poor people, children, people without really resources or income. It focuses heavily on these types of people. Do you feel like you got a great sense of their daily lives and their character from the photographs that we saw?
Well, I think the most interesting thing was that they were portraying jobs and like tough lives, especially for children that were involved in like.
Well, there's the thing. Yeah, lots of kids in well, for the boys they're wearing men's clothing, men's jackets and men's shoes and doing men's work, and some of them look like miniature men. They've been hardened by or they seem touched by their daily actions. And the women also have the children, the female children, the little girls also have an air of maturity or forced maturity that other children, other decades in other countries, wouldn't necessarily have because of their unique situations. So yeah, we can definitely imagine that life was very hard, and the types of labor they were involved in was very physical labor. One kid relatively seemed quite comfortable learning how to fix shoes, but the majority of kids were shifting coal, working down mines, on construction sites, for example. So work that's physically taxing, and these kids were engaged in it. But a lot of the people were smiling and laughing, which really did humanize them. It was a lovely aspect of the series, and there was a justification for this in the museum, wasn't there? Do you remember what the photographer was talking about? No. So so what he said was, well, life was very hard for people, and Franco tried to create a society where people were uniformly silent and grey and the same, and just engaged with whatever the regime wanted them to be engaged with. But the people didn't have any means, didn't have any ways of getting out or escaping their situations, or even jobs. So they just busied themselves with just enjoying life and having a bit of the crack and the banter. And that does really come across in the photos. I mean, it's sometimes it's hard to articulate how you feel about a photographic series, but this is very well put together. It does what it sets out to do. You get a sense for these people's lives. They're smiling, they're happy, they seem like real people. And it's a real snapshot of a Spain, from bygone era, because it's a confident, modern, first world country now, but back in the day, very poor in some parts and very underprivileged, in different sectors. But you're the Spanish person, so.
Well, I think this is definitely an exhibition that everybody should see, because when we were, this is like a slideshow of like a whole lot more photos that you don't see in the exhibition, and I was just seeing when we were looking at them, I was just thinking how it's hard to believe that it's the same place, and I think a lot of young people nowadays probably don't have a grasp of what things were like back then, because the generation is changing now, and people of my age are kind of like, I feel, the last ones to be in touch with, what things used to be like.
Well, I understand what you mean, but I think the earliest photographs were from 1943. So it's not, well, it is, depending on your perspective, a long time ago, but I think everybody, even kids who are 18, 17, maybe even a little bit younger, have grandparents maybe who are in touch with that time. So even though it does seem a world away in the specifics of the living situation, and also in terms of years, there's still a very tangible link there, and people that just aren't tapping into it maybe, because these grandparents will tell these stories, and these people that we're looking at had daughters and sons who became parents of the generation that we are interacting with now, either as people of a similar age, or maybe a little bit younger, students in the classes that we give, so there's a real tangible link between us and the photographs, no? Aside from the fact that it's Spain, it's Madrid, it's the country that we're both in at the moment.
Yeah, I guess you could say it as well. So yeah, perhaps I didn't express it in the best way, but
don't worry, I swooped in.
That's kind of how I had to say the day. But no, I mean, well, links or no links, it's how much interest you put into it, how much you want to learn about it, and whether you use the resources that you have around you. So
of course,
ignorance is not.
There is a primary source, oral living history that can be engaged with.
Yeah.
But I don't think it was our intention to speak for so long, 8 minutes, about the exhibition, even though it is a wonderful one. We're going to focus more on the museum itself. So you do have experience of it as a attendee, as a professional in there also as well. You've seen both sides of the coin. You've brought students in there, explained this and that. There's 3 floors. The ground floor has kind of random things, space for exhibitions. The first floor is about Africa, and the last and top floor is about the Americas. So, but it's quite a small museum, and it's fair to say that a lot of people probably feel it's not reaching its full potential.
I would say so. A lot of people actually don't know the museum. I have never been to a museum.
Yeah, it was empty today, even though it's €3 to go in, so it's quite cheap. But it wasn't it wasn't throbbing with people, for example.
Well, I think recently, like they're trying hard to come up with activities, workshops, and so on. Especially for like schools, a lot of schools visit during the day. And also like they try to like family activities at weekends and so on, so probably it wasn't the best time to be there and to assess like how many people go. But yeah, it's not as popular as other museums perhaps, but well, I think they're trying hard to overturn that.
Yes, it's quite small, so they probably have to enlarge the space, because you do have not very many things from the different floors. There are interesting things there, it has to be said. Headdresses, little information panels about different religions, weapons, tokens of decoration, even skulls in some part of the museum. But it's not labels as detailed as maybe it could be. It's missing dates, so even simple things like that are probably missing. But there are things there that are worth seeing, but it's not filling its potential. You do have experience of another museum, the Archaeological Museum, which we have discussed in the previous podcast, and I think generally Madrid is a city that's home to a lot of wonderful museums, big museums, very well taken care of museums where you can learn a lot, and it's it's more dynamic, I think. So is there one museum that in Madrid that you think that this anthropological museum could look to, or maybe take most of its inspiration from?
Well, I think definitely the Archaeology Museum had a renewal, revamping about 7 years ago. They started and then it reopened like three or 4 years ago. Now they've definitely brought it to the 20th century with displays, and they've made it very educational and very accessible, and well, those things are the things that are missing in this museum. But I believe that's the way to go, and I know there are people trying to
energize it.
Yeah, take it that way, in that direction.
And in other cultural news in the city, Templo de Bud, which is the Egyptian masterpiece in one of the barracks.
It's shut again.
It's shut again. So we've touched on this in the previous podcast as well. So a lot of wrangling, financial and otherwise, over this space. Do you think this will be solved anytime soon?
Well, it's a very complicated matter, and it's been going on for many years, and it's political as well as archaeological. So I hope we find a solution soon, because it's a shame, and it's just deteriorating to the point of like destruction. So.
Okay. Well, very good. So 3 things to ponder on. But I'm sure this year is going to be full of cultural visits and musings from ourselves, and of course as well you, the listener. So any final comments on any of the 3 topics that we've touched upon today?
No, just we'll be seeing more of these kind of things.
Okay, I'm fresh out of things to say. So musicals coming, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1, now. to the last part of the show. Thank you for tuning in as always. We'll be back with a longer podcast, but on similar topics. And I hope you're adjusting back into your work routine, your normal routine after the holidays, and you're sticking to those resolutions. So this is Enda from Alarpa saying goodbye.
And Maria saying bye.
Ciao, ciao.
You're listening to Subsound Radio. We bring you streaming and live broadcasting from the capital. This is the Alarpa Podcast.